welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 12 of our YouTube series focusing on how to become a level 1 judge. My name is Bryan and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather.
Hello, hello.
And the one and only Marco Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. So let's start off this episode by giving a shout out to our sponsor. This episode and our entire series for L1s is sponsored by Judge Foundry. Judge Foundry is a membership-based nonprofit organization serving the U.S. and Canada in providing certifications for tabletop gaming officials. They manage everything to do with obtaining and maintaining your certification and provide educational resources like this one to ensure that every Judge Foundry certified judge has the knowledge and skills to be successful. When it comes to running Magic events at your local game store or at a larger international convention, Judge Foundry is a great resource for you to certify your skills. For more information on Judge Foundry, visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to find out how you can earn your level and join the Judge Foundry Discord to chat and interact with the Judge Foundry judging community in the US and Canada. The links for both are in the description below.
Previously in the series, we discussed how to cast spells, triggered and activated abilities, and how to resolve those spells and abilities. Today, we're going to cover what some of those spells and abilities result in, one-shot effects, and we're going to start on continuous effects. The focus of the series is on what a level 1 judge working F&M or scheduled events at a larger event should know. As always, we don't cover every corner case in depth, but if you wish to go deeper or explore topics outside the scope of what is needed for your level 1 exam, you can delve into our extensive library at JudgeCast.com or search for us on your podcast app of choice. Our podcasts are typically at least an hour, so you get both more detailed discussion, humor, insight, and of course, our eupeptic confabulations.
When you resolve a spell or ability, you're often instructed to do something. And the next question you may ask yourself after being instructed to do something is, well, how long is this good for? This is where we start making the distinction between one-shot effects and continuous effects. One-shot effects are game effects that do something just once, and they don't have a duration. One-shot effects include things like dealing damage with a lightning bolt, destroying a permanent with abrupt decay, countering a spell with counterspell, or creating a token with acorn harvest.
A continuous effect, on the other hand, is an effect that modifies the characteristics of objects, or modifies things like the control of objects, or affects the players or rules of the game for a fixed or indefinite period of time. Big thing here is that you have a specific duration that is laid out as part of the effect. The major focus here is that whatever this effect wants you to do, it does so for longer than just right now. A continuous effect will continuously apply for a duration of time, say until end of turn, like with a giant growth, or until end of combat, like with Jade Statue, or for the remainder of the current game, for something like Finale of Revelation, or the triggered ability from Screaming Nemesis that says that you can't gain any more life.
Let's start by covering what a one-shot effect is. One-shot effects happen when a spell or ability instructs you to do something now, and it has no duration. When you're told to create a token, such as our friend here, Advent of the Worm. Or when you do damage to a permanent or player with a card like Lightning Bolt. It just happens, and it's done. One shot, once and done.
On the other side, there are continuous effects. Continuous effects are things that happen for a specific fixed amount of time, or an indefinite period, or a duration. For example, Giant Growth says that a creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So Giant Growth was an instant spell that created a continuous effect that specified a duration until end of turn. There are other cards, typically permanents, like Anthem of Champions, that have a continuous effect that has no duration. In that case, those types of cards are just constantly applying, their continuous effect is just constantly applying while that permanent exists on the battlefield. All creatures that are on the battlefield, while Anthem of Champions player controls it, are getting a +1/+1 bonus to their power and toughness.
Now, there are some one-shot effects that can appear to have a duration, but actually they don't. And this might be a little tricky. So some one-shot effects will say that an object will change zones, quote, until a specific event occurs. Then what happens is a second one-shot effect is created immediately after the first, and that one-shot effect is what returns the object to its previous zone based off of what that one specific thing is. Sounds like we need an example here.
Well, I'm here to provide an example here. Let's look at the card Banisher Priest. This card says that a creature is exiled from the battlefield until Banisher Priest leaves the battlefield. While the overall effect does mention a duration, this is still a one-shot effect. It sets up another one-shot effect to return the creature whenever a specific event happens in the game.
So, as Marcos said earlier, continuous effects modify the characteristics of objects or modifies the control of objects or affects players of the rules for a fixed or indefinite period of time. The ability on Banisher Priest isn't doing any of those things. It's just moving a creature from the battlefield to exile. All right, that's why it is a one-shot effect instead of a continuous effect. It does the move once, and it happens. We're not continuously checking things. We're not continuously applying anything. And then when Banisher Priest leaves the battlefield, we do another one-shot effect to move it back.
So here's another example using our same card here, Banisher Priest. If the ability that causes an object to change zones until a specified event happens is going to resolve, but that event has already happened before you would complete the initial one-shot effect. So if the part that happens at the end actually happens before the beginning even starts, then you don't actually do any of it. You wouldn't complete the initial one-shot effect, and the object doesn't change zones. So for Banisher Priest here, if you target a bear cub with its Enter the Battlefield ability, and I remove your Banisher Priest with a lightning bolt before its ability resolves, it will see that the effect that would end the exile has already happened. So it won't even bother to remove the bear cub from the field at all. Here, the event that would end the initial effect has already happened, so the entire thing is just considered to be sort of done.
Now, let's move on to continuous effects. A continuous effect is an effect that happens over a period of time and can come from almost anything. Auras, enchantments, artifacts, creatures, planeswalkers, spells or abilities resolving, you name it. These can last for a step or a phase, a turn, or even the entire game. If they don't define a duration specifically, they just last until the end of the game.
One more thing about continuous effects. If a continuous effect is generated by the resolution of a spell or ability, and that changes the characteristics of a set of objects or changes the control of objects, that set of creatures is fixed for when the effect begins to apply. Okay? For example, you'll see this on our boy Craterhoof Behemoth has a triggered ability that says when this creature enters, creatures you control gain trample and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. The set of creatures that gain trample and get +X is set when that ability resolves. So creatures that you play afterwards do not get the bonus.
Continuous effects are also often generated by a static ability of an object. We're going to bring back our old friend Anthem of Champions, which generates a static ability and doesn't ever lock in like that resolving Craterhoof Behemoth trigger does. At this point, it just is constantly looking. Are you a creature on the battlefield? Great, you get a power and toughness boost just like everybody else. Static abilities are always continuously checking and applying its effect to anything in the game that can be affected by its ability the moment it becomes relevant.
Let's say that we have our friend Anthem of Champions on the battlefield under our control, along with a Mentor of the Meek. Anthem of Champions has a continuous effect from its static ability that just applies at all times. It's giving creatures +1/+1. Now, what happens when we cast Bear Cub, a 2/2, and it enters the battlefield? When it enters the battlefield, does it enter as a 2/2 or does it enter as a 3/3? Because of Anthem of Champions, it enters as a 3/3, which means Mentor of the Meek's trigger, Whenever another creature you control with power 2 or less enters, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. Never happens, because Mentor of the Meek only sees the bear cub as a 3/3. It does not see it as having power 2 or less.
Now, the reason this works is because continuous effects that modify the characteristics of permanents do so simultaneously with the permanent entering the battlefield. They don't wait until the permanent is on the battlefield and then change it. It always applies. It's always watching. So if the creature is on the battlefield, it's got that characteristic modified if it applies.
Now, similarly to one-shot effects, continuous effects can define a duration that is variable. But if it does, it will use the phrase, quote, for as long as. Just like one-shot effects, if the duration of a for as long as never starts, the effect doesn't do anything. Or if the duration ends before the effect could first be applied, then it also does nothing. It never even begins to apply because the end state has already been reached.
An example of the difference here is with a card like Master Thief. When its ability goes to resolve, if the Master Thief was already unalived and removed from the battlefield, you'll never gain control of that artifact you targeted, your opponent's Soul Ring, for instance. If it resolves, that effect happens continuously as a control effect, continuing to check whether Master Thief is under your control.
All right. So those are the general rules around one-shot effects and continuous effects. Now, you might have heard about this thing called layers. However, that's just the colloquial name. The actual name for layers is the interaction of continuous effects. So instead of just having a standalone continuous effect, layers is where we start to combine them. So when there's multiple continuous effects, how do we handle that? And fortunately, all of layers, all of the interaction of continuous effects are not on the level 1 exam. However, in next episode, we will be covering the aspects of the layer system, the interaction of continuous effects that you do need to know for the level 1 exam. So as a tease, the layers are copy, control, text, type, color, abilities, and power and toughness. In the next episode, we will be predominantly concerned with the type changing effects in layer 4 and the power and toughness changing effects in layer 7. So you do not need to memorize all of the layers in order, but it'd be much cooler if you did.
All right, so that is one-shot effects, continuous effects, and your first very brief taste, a little amuse-bouche of layers. And of course, we would like to also thank Judge Foundry for their support in sponsoring this series, for helping you earn your level 1 certification. Make sure to visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to learn how you can join the Magic judging community in the US and Canada and earn your certification with Judge Foundry.
Join us next time as we continue our series for earning your level 1 certification and start talking about everyone's boogeyman, layers. And if you want to reach out to us, we have our own Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. The invite link to our Discord is in the description below, as well as our JudgeCast and individual social media links. If you're a fan of our content, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to be notified when new videos in the series are posted or when a new episode of our full podcast is released. Make sure to check out our channel's playlist for our complete L1 series, as well as a Learn to Judge playlist with episodes from JudgeCast's history focused on helping you become a better judge. And as always, you can find everything relating to JudgeCast at judgecast.com. With that, I'm Charles Featherer, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan, and if I stop recording my podcast before I even start, did I even do anything?